Good day, everyone. Greetings from Group 1 students in GE8 or Ethics subject. At this moment, we are going to report our assigned topics together with our group members and leader. Our topics is all about human values that refer to the basic inherent moral inclinations towards kindness, honesty, loyalty, love, peace, sympathy, truth, and etc. that enhance fundamental goodness of human beings and society at large. Ethics is what guides to tell the truth, keep our promises, or help someone in need. There's a framework or ethics underlying our lives on a daily basis, helping us make decisions that create positive impacts and steering us away from unjust outcomes. So ethics and values make us individuals aware that their choices have consequences, both for themselves and others. Thus, ethics and values build credibility, leadership skills, improve decisions making, and provides long-term gains. Ethics and values help in satisfying basic human needs. So, our objectives. At the end of this lesson, the students should be able to first, identify the different types of values and norms in ethics. Second, enumerate the different kinds of cultural values. Third, distinguish relative and absolute value. Fourth, differentiate intrinsic and extrinsic values. Now, let's welcome for the first presenter to be discussed the first type of human value, Mr. Judimar L. Amatorio. Mr. Judimar?
Thank you very much, Miss Jamaica. I am Judimar L. Amatorio and I will be the one to discuss the personal values. So what are personal values? Personal values are broad desirable goals that motivate people's actions and serve as guiding principles in their lives. Everyone has values, but each person has a different value set. These differences are affected by an individual's culture, personal upbringing, life experiences, and a range of other influences. Personal values are desirable to individual and represent what is important to someone. The same value in different people can elicit different behaviors. For example, if someone values success, one person may work very hard to gain success in their career, whereas someone else may take advantage of others to climb the career ladder. So, a person can have many values with an individual assigning more importance to some values over others. It has been shown that the values that are unimportant to you often guide your decision making in all aspects of your life in such a career, religion, social circles, self-identity, and many more. Personal value, a broad concept, and one value on be applied to various situations. So another example is if an important value to you is loyalty. This could be applied to your family, friends, or work environment. So these values have been researched in many countries and have been found to be universal in cross-cultural applications. So these are the lists. So number 1, self-direction. Example is freedom and creativity. Number 2, stimulation. Example is exciting life and daring. Number 3, hedonism. Example is pleasure and self-indulgent. Number 4, achievement. Example is ambitious and successful. Number 5, power. Example, wealth and authority. Number 6, security. Social order, family, security, and cleanliness. Number 7, conformity. Example is politeness, self-discipline, and respect. Number 8, tradition. Example is respect for traditions, modest, humble, and devout. Number 9, benevolence. Example is loyal, responsible, helpful, forgiving. Number 10, universalism. Example is equality, wisdom, world of peace, social justice, protecting the environment. So, list of personal values can be indefinite, but research has shown a value will generally fit into one of those 10 types. There is no set of ideal values, and everyone will have their own list of values with unique importance assigned to each one. So personal values may and may not correlate with a person's behavior. Uh, some values may be practiced by an individual and executed in daily life. A personal value may be important to someone, but they are not implementing it in their daily life and they would like to implement it. And an individual may have a set of personal values that is not in line with their behavior. Now, let's proceed to the next presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Jodemar. Good morning, everyone. I am Ruchilin Amadu, and I will be the one to discuss cultural values. So, what are cultural values? All humans have cultural values that they learn starting in childhood. Cultural values are neither good nor bad, but they describe basic tendencies in the way that people prepare to work and live. By understanding your own preference in this area and comparing them with typical norms for other groups, you will develop insight that can help you understand other people's action and improve your interpersonal effectiveness. Cultural values are personal preferences that remain relatively stable or over time. Understanding your own preference and learning about the typical preference of others can help you anticipate possible similarities and differences in ways people approach life and work. Cultural values can differ among individuals with similar cultural backgrounds and between two individuals from different cultural backgrounds. 10 cultural values. First is individualism or collectivism. Individualism versus collectivism is the extent to which you think of yourself primarily as an individual versus primarily as a member of a specific group. Number 2. Power distance. Power distance is the extent to which you prefer a flat, egalitarian approach to leadership versus a more top-down hierarchical leadership style. Number 3. Uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance is the extent which you prepare to be flexible and adapt to changing circumstances versus reducing and avoiding uncertainty. Number 4. Cooperative and competitive. Cooperative versus competitive is the extent to which you prepare to achieve results collaboratively versus competitively. Number 5. Time of orientation. Time orientation is the extent which you prepare to focus on immediate results versus results that become several years later. Number 6. Context, direct or indirect. Context is the extent which you prepare communication that is explicit, direct, and clear versus communication that is more indirect, emphasize harmony, and saving face. Number 7. Being and doing. Being versus doing is the extent which you prepare quality of life versus proactively working toward goals. Number 8. Universalism and particularism. Universalism versus particularism is the extent which you prepare to apply the same standards to everyone versus making exceptions for friends and family. Number 9. Expressiveness, neutral, affective. Expressiveness is the extent to which you prepare, hide your emotions versus show them. Number 10. Focus, monochronic, polychronic. Focus is the extent which you prepare to do one thing at a time versus multitasking.
Values relating to the norms of culture. The definition of cultural norms refers to shared belief or values and human behaviors that support these values within a given society, such as the standard of conduct that are met with social approval or disapproval. Cultural norms and values are society expectations that are reflected in the attitude and behaviors in a group of people. A norm refers to attitude and behaviors that are considered typical or average of a social group, while beliefs are often referred to as values. Norms support values. Norms are learned by what people say, think, and do. Cultural norms or values are passed down to people through their families, friends, and acquaintances with an expectation that will be adopted by the person, which shapes by society. Here, we will explore cultural norms, examples, and review how cultural norms and values interact. We will also learn how cultural norms or values shape and influence almost everything people do, from greetings someone with a simple hello or shake hands, or wearing appropriate clothing to a religious service. Cultural norms and values have a significant impact on everyday human affairs. They are the unspoken rules of society transmitted through a conformity, internationalization, socialization, and social control. Cultural norms and values give us predictability and help keep order in society. Without cultural norms and values, society is aided by cultural norms and values because they give people a set of expectation for how to think and act. Sometimes cultural norms and values are shaped and are changed by the belief and behaviors of the people who uphold them or who work to change them over time. For example, it was once considered illegal to marry someone of the same gender, but people worked to change that law and it is now legal in America and many other countries worldwide. 2003. Cultural norms of definition and cultural norms examples for laws, folkways, mores, and taboos. Consider that if a person breaks that law authorized in a society will likely arrest them, prosecute them, and administer and punishment to them such as a jail time. Community service prohibition. Community service provision or viral consequence for their misconduct would be due to the laws. Laws are rules that govern groups of people and the behavior that is allowed for the group, with the consequence of offenders who break the law. In the most cases, laws are enacted by the state. Laws are formal written rules that details the type of behaviors allowed in a society that bind in the members to its role and others. For example, it is illegal to murder another person in the US. The consequence for the murder in the life in prison or death in some cases. But there is always a consequence even if the person is eventually released. Laws and morality significant and determine legal from illegal behavior.
Hi, good day. I am Orange Namante and I am discussing values relating to the norms of culture. So, imagine a person is rude or wrong in each situation. If their behavior is deemed rude but not wrong according to the cultural norms and values, this judgment can be folkways. Folkways are customs or conventions that give us set expression for how we should act in each situation. Folkways are not morally significant and do not determine legal from illegal behavior. If a person bleaches at the dinner table after eating a meal, that would be considered rude in most a meal. That would be considered rude in most Western culture whereas it would be considered a compliant in order in the case cultural norms and values determine the quote from the unquote whether to look someone in the eye while talking to them is also type of folkways. Some culture consider lack of eye contact while speaking with others to be rude, while Native Americans and indigenous people believes that looking an elder direct in the eyes while speaking to be disrespectful.
Good day. I will give more explanation about values relating to the norms of cultures. Contrast being rude or disrespectful with someone who is taught to be morally wrong by society. Cultural norms and values will dictate these mores. Mores differentiate moral conduct from amoral behavior. In fact, some mores are taken so seriously society that entire religious structures and texts indoctrinate standards of behavior that will not be tolerated in their texts and customs, such as the testament that thou should not kill. In other words, most people agree that conduct like stealing, lying, and murdering is wrong, and they will not tolerate that behavior from other people in society. In many cases, mores and laws approximately each other, with mores being the belief system and laws serving as right and formalized manifestation and enforcement of the belief. Mores are morally significant, hence the Latin root word mores, which means manner, custom, usage, or habit. Cultural norms and values also determine what is taboo in society. Taboo is something that is not acceptable to talk about or do. Sometimes there is even an underlying belief that one will be punished by a higher authority for breaking the code of conduct set for by ones.
So thank you, Mr. John Ray. And now let's move on relative values and absolute values. So by the way, I am Limuel Giliepa Amante, second student of Best Forestry and also Pamplona. So what is a relative value? A relative value is a method of determining an asset worth that takes into account the value of similar assets. So are those they vary depending on the situations and variables of the person, such as social class, nationality, age, or personal experiences. So examples of relative value: moral values are a set of beliefs and guidelines that guide the behavior of human beings and allow them to differentiate between good and evil. So the relative value is allowing to a human being to differentiate between good and evil. For example, the values that predominate in high-class individual, socially, politically, and economically privileged, will not necessarily be the same ones that predominate in an individual belonging to a socially included and marginalized minority social group. Then, the moral values of a Catholic are not the same as a Muslim. From this point of view, the values are therefore relative. So, we all know that also Catholic are not the same of a Muslim, because a Muslim is, for my understanding, Catholic is a Christian, so it's different between Muslim or Christian or Muslim or Catholic. Then, however, deciding what is good and what is wrong depends on many factors, such as the concrete situation that is present, then the people involved, among others. Then the differentiation between good and evil varies from country to country and from culture to culture. So it's culture. Then depend on the set of ideas and beliefs. So it's a matter also of the beliefs of a human being. In this sense, the concept of relative and moral values, so it arises. So in this, we base on culture to culture and then the bit of ideas and beliefs. So in this particular situation, relative values or moral values is arises. So that's all.
Relative values is a method of determining an asset's worth that takes into account the value of similar assets. This is in contrast with absolute value, which looks only at an asset's intrinsic value and does not compare it to other assets. The word values are things that have intrinsic worth in usefulness or importance to the possessor, or principles, standards, or qualities considered worthwhile or desirable. However, it is important to note that although we may tend to think of values as something good, virtually all values are morally relative, neutral really until They are qualified by asking how is it good or good to whom. The good can sometimes be just a matter of opinion or taste, or driven by a culture, religion, habit, circumstance, or environment, etc. Again, almost all values are relative. The exception, of course, is the value of life. Life is a universal, objective value. We might take this point for granted, but we all have the life value, or we would not be alive. Life is also a dual value. We value our own life and the lives of others.
Thank you, Mr. Amante. So, good day, everyone. This is Robert Lizunyaga, and today I'll be discussing to you what an absolute values is. But first, let's just have a very short review of what a moral and ethics is. So, it comes from Latin word mores, meaning customs, and it is concerned with what is right and wrong conduct. While ethics, it comes from the Greek word ethos, meaning it is a principles or standards of human conduct, and sometimes it is called morals naman daw. Then let's proceed to the main topic. So there are two main types of morality theories. So there are relative values, and then the other one is absolute values. So absolute values, it is a universal standards of right or wrong that apply to all people at all times. No? Then it applies to everyone, everything, and in all of these situations. So this value must not change, for it is and should be. It should be correct, and it does not allow for nuance. So these values is, in other words, intended for all the people. No, kumbaga, all of us knows, regardless of what culture we have, like lahat tayo ay may paniniwalang this kind of value is good, and the other one, this kind of values is bad. No, say for example, the 10 Commandments of God. That's an example of what an absolute value says. Like lahat tayo ay naniniwala na ang pagpatay ay mali for all the time, for kahit anong rason pa yan, kahit sabihin mo pang nakapatay ka for the purpose na dinipensahan mo, for the purpose of the protection of ourselves, no? Still, ang pagpatay ay mali naman talaga. It states in the 10 Commandments, no, that it is very right to kill people, and we all know that. Then let's proceed to, yes, absolute values, the same meaning. It states that absolutism maintains that moral values are fixed regardless of time, place, and all the people concerned. So we must do the very right thing to do. Okay. The next we have the Kant's ethics. So Kant's ethical theory is often cited as the paradigm of deontological theory. So what is a deontological theory? A deontological theory, it holds that some acts are morally obligatory regardless of their consequences for human welfare. Diba? So yun na nga. In Module 1, we can see that according to Kant, a person can only act morally right only when he suppresses his feelings and inclination and does that which he is obliged to do. So meaning we must only do what's the right thing to do, diba? Kaya yung sabi ko kanina, diba? Kahit na sabihin mo pa na ang rason is nakapatay ka because you are just protecting yourself. It's the same with a sin. So mali talaga ang pagpatay ng tao, diba? So we all know that it is good. All the people knows that this certain value is good and this certain values is bad, diba? And we all know that is an absolute values. Well, that's what an absolute values is. Then let's proceed to here. So what is the difference between absolute morality and relative morality? So we have here, unlike in absolutism, the value of tolerance is emphasized in relativism. So maybe I'll just show it to you. Maybe you can just copy it because I am running out of time. So I will now call my classmate to answer some of my questions. So I have Antonio, Mark, Joshua, Cabo, Guelon, and Cadalyn Brian. Can you give a meaning of what an absolute value is, and Can you give example? Okay, next is Caldagiana Marie, Digel IV, and Erohorexane. Can you differentiate absolute morality to relative morality? And then for Cadavis Jamaica and Gantalaw Isabel, what do you think? Can you explain the deontological theory, and can you give a certain type of examples? No. So okay, that would be all in my video, and thank you for watching, and God bless everyone. So the next topic will be discussed by one of my teammates or group mates. So thank you everyone, and bye bye.
It's me, Christina Bezuela, and for today's video I will be discussing intrinsic versus extrinsic value. So, intrinsic value. Intrinsic value has traditionally been thought to lie at the heart of ethics. Philosophers use several terms to refer to such value. The intrinsic value of something is said to be the value that thing has in itself, or for its own sake, or such as, or in its own right. Extrinsic value, on the other hand, is a value that is not intrinsic. Many philosophers take intrinsic value to be crucial to a variety of moral judgments. For example, according to a fundamental form of consequentialism, whether an action is morally right or wrong has exclusively to do with whether its consequences are intrinsically better than those of any other action one can perform under the circumstances. Many other theories also hold that what is right or wrong to do has, at least in a part, to do with the intrinsic value, the consequences of the actions one can perform. Moreover, if, as is commonly believed, one responsible for doing some function of the rightness or wrongness of what one does, then intrinsic value would seem relevant to judgments about responsibilities too. Intrinsic value is also often taken to be pertinent to judgments about moral justice, whether having to do with moral rights or moral desert, insofar as it is good that justice is done and bad that justice is denied, in ways that appear intimately tied to. Finally, it is typically thought that judgments about moral virtue and vice also turn on questions of intrinsic value, since virtues are good and vices are bad, again in ways that appear closely connected to such value. All four types of moral judgments have been the subject of discussion since the dawn of Western philosophy in ancient Greece. The Greeks themselves were especially concerned with the questions about virtue and vice, and the concept of intrinsic value may be found at work in their writings and in the writings of moral philosophers ever since. Despite this fact, and rather surprisingly, it is only within the last 100 years or so that this concept has itself been the subject of sustained scrutiny, and even within this relatively brief period, that scrutiny has waxed and waned. So, extrinsic value is a value that is not extrinsic. It is also called instrumental value. On the other hand, it is a quality of something that receives its value from a relationship with something else that is fundamentally valuable. An example of it is you are friends with someone, they are good at a sport and they can help you get better. So that's all for today, my discussion. I hope you understand the intrinsic and extrinsic value. So bye.
So now, the question by Judimar L. Amatorio to Josephine Y. Papa. What is personal values in your own opinion? Question by Richelin M. Amado to Rinalyn K. Ridula. It is the extent to which you prefer to be flexible and adapt to changing circumstances versus reducing and avoiding uncertainty. Question by John Ray A. Babortonel Jean Claro. It is referred to the attitudes and behaviors that are considered typical or average for a social group, while beliefs are often referred to as values. Question by Warren John Amante to Rogelyn Tolero. So blank are customs or conventions that give us a set of expectations for how we should act in each situation. Question by Rovic de la Planet to Jason Kadusali. It is something that is not acceptable to talk about or do. Question by Linuel Amanti to Melka Jane Romano in section PC. What is relative value? Question by Michael Coal to Rionet Bangay Siso. It is true or false? So the moral values of Catholic is not the same as a Muslim? Question by Robert Lee Zuniaga to Jerly May Valencia in section PC. It maintains that moral values are fixed regardless of time, place, and the people concerned. Question by Christina Azuela to Julina Kulanag. It is traditionally been thought to lie at the heart of ethics. And last question by Jamaica A. Amatorio to Beverly Dio. What is extrinsic value? So that's all for this video. Thank you and God bless us all.